What's that over there? It's the O Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, CW. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to hit that bell on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast on any and all platforms. Thank you again. I appreciate you and your time. Let's get into this. Today, we're talking about wrestling hobbies. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wrestling is a hobby. Not actively participating in professional wrestling. That is a job, a very dangerous job. But the watching of wrestling, whether it be WWE, AEW, New Japan, DPW, give me another one, MLW, NWA, I can keep going. Anyway, you get it. If you watch that, it is a hobby. There are people who take that hobby a bit further and just like follow WWE or their favorite promotion around. Specifically in WWE, I know that there are a few gents and ladies who are at every Raw or SmackDown or something. There is a guy, I think they call him Green Shirt Guy. I think he's been at every pay-per-view and Raw and probably SmackDown for the past like 30 years or something. Now, I hope he makes the most money and can continue to do this to enjoy his life. Look, if you're taking care of yourself, your family, your business, and then you just want to go watch pro wrestling every time it shows up in any town ever, do that. If you have the means and everything else in your life is taken care of, why not enjoy yourself, right? So good on them. There's also a guy who carries around a Trinidad flag. I've been seeing this dude for years. He sits ringside, either in the front row or like a couple rows behind, and he just holds up a Trinidad flag the entire time, the entire show. He'll just have the flag up, and it's become a thing. Like, I've seen people on WWE Reddit asking, who is this guy and what is this flag? First of all, Google exists. Just Google the flag. It's very simple. It's the Trinidadian flag. Shout out to Trinidad and Tobago. Second, how awesome is that? Like, if you are a hobbyist and you love watching wrestling, can you imagine being those guys or gals who are able to do what they're doing, show up to every other pay-per-view or Raw or SmackDown or whatever. I was going to say main event, but main event is just Raw. That's great. That's a great hobby. But outside of that very, very expensive hobby, there are things for regular folks like you or me to do that can be considered a wrestling hobby. For instance, collecting wrestling figures. Now, shout out to Dad's First Time, twitch.tv/Dad's First Time. He has a very extensive, very amazing wrestling figure collection. He's been doing it for decades. That's right, decades. We're old. And when I helped him move into one of his apartments, we transferred all his stuff over to this new place, and he ended up buying a glass enclosure for all these wrestling figures, and looking at them all in one place, kind of displayed out. It was impressive. He's got versions of different 80s wrestlers. I mean, the figures are immaculate. They're all intact. Back when we were in high school, figures were a big thing. Action figures were huge, and Dad's First Time would periodically create his own wrestling figures. He had such a fantastic creative mind for that stuff, and he made a little business out of it. He would create wrestlers for people. All you had to do was provide an action figure, and then he would go home, and then within a week he would come back and he would give you back whatever professional wrestler you asked for. I'm not going to give away the method by which he did it, but it was very clever. Especially for a young guy with no money, it was very clever how he transformed these figures. I would say if you have any interest, go check out his stream and then ask him, and he'll tell you. But yeah, figure collecting is definitely one of my favorite wrestling pastimes, wrestling hobbies. I've recently started collecting my own wrestling figures. Now, Walmart, follow me. Walmart has an exclusive WWE Superstars line of figures. They're these 80s style figures. They're very squat. chibi style, like very super muscular wrestling figures, and they're fantastic. They're amazing quality, great articulation. The detail in the faces are exquisite, and the gear that they come with like sunglasses and capes and all their vests and rubber boots and stuff. It's very, not only is it authentic, but it's so well produced. I was like, I can't not buy this. The first two that I picked up, the first two that I got were Papa Shango and The Undertaker. Two of the greatest characters, just like the action figures. They're fantastic. They're amazing. Papa Shango looks exactly like Papa Shango. Undertaker, it's the old with the wide brim hat Undertaker, and the hat is great. He has a nice jacket. The jacket, the quality of the material is amazing. It's fantastic. So I'm on a mission to collect these figures. I've also purchased Shawn Michaels and the Outsiders. They look great. I just got them in the mail. I'm looking for a Macho Man. I'm looking for the Mankind. I'm looking for the WWE Superstars action figure from Mr. T. It is an amazing figure, and I need it. I need it in my life. I'm going to find it. I'm going to go to every Walmart if I can. I'm not. Another wrestling hobby is the collecting of WWE Championship belts. If you haven't lifted one of these belts before, one of these replica belts, they are heavy. It is a heavy, hefty, expensive hobby to collect these titles, but certainly worthwhile. It is. There's nothing quite like having the heft and shimmering gold of a WWE or wrestling title in your house. Those belts, you don't get the full sort of gleaming amazingness of the belt on television until you like hold it in your hand. Those, like I said, those things are heavy. They're hefty. Can you imagine just every time I see Roman Reigns carrying both of those titles, I'm like, that is a workout in itself. It's not like it's 20 pounds or something, but it's a couple pounds of leather and metal. But definitely people have walls and walls of every championship belt that's ever been made. Well, replicas, obviously. But then there's you take it a step further, and wrestlers, when they win a title, they get a replica of that belt. Someone like The Miz was drilling them into his wall. If you go back and watch some of the old Up, Up, Down, Down shows where Miz and Xavier Woods played Street Fighter for the rights to Miz's titles, spoilers, Xavier Woods washes his ass, just completely takes all his titles off his wall. So much so that Miz started putting up Maurice's Diva title. You can't just gamble your wife's title away. It was a problem. I think they just had to stop at some point. They were like, look, we can't keep stealing all your stuff. Now, I don't know if Xavier Woods was gracious enough to give those titles back, but his collection was definitely decimated by Xavier Woods. I would love to collect those. I have the greatest title ever. It's the White Intercontinental Championship. There's no better belt out there. I defy you to debate me on that. There's no better looking title anywhere, ever. Maybe the NXT UK belts. Those belts were fantastic. Oh, I need a replica of those. But it's definitely an expensive hobby but a fun pastime. It is a conversation starter for sure whenever I zoom into a meeting. One of my last hobbies I can think of that I actively participate in are wrestling video games. I used to collect wrestling video games religiously. I had every SmackDown game. I had, I think, almost all the 2K games up until maybe 2K19. That's when I stopped, and I've recently picked up 2K23, which is a fantastic game. Maybe I'll do a review of that, even though I haven't played too much of it. It's definitely a wrestling hobby that it doesn't require you to even watch wrestling. You can get all the wrestling you need from these 2K games. If you play the Universe mode, you can just have your own Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-views by yourself. Anyway, I definitely didn't cover every wrestling hobby. So what's your favorite wrestling hobby? Was it something I mentioned? Was it something I didn't? Leave it in the comments and let me know. Thank you so much for listening to 10 Minutes of Wrestling Fandom. Have a blessed day, and don't forget,
I'm your friend, but if I ever see you in the ring, I can beat you. Don't you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah!